John Harlow had always enjoyed his commute to work, even if it was long and lonely. Every morning he drove down a winding, desolate road bordered by dense trees that whispered in the wind. It was peaceful, a rare moment of solitude before the chaos of the day. Along that stretch of road, nestled inconspicuously among the trees, was a run-down bar. Its sign, faded and crooked, read, "The Hollow Lantern." He passed it every day without sparing it much thought. The place looked like it hadn't seen a new coat of paint in decades, and its parking lot was perpetually empty. John never stopped there. Why would he? It was just another relic of a forgotten past, a place out of sync with the world. But everything changed one gray autumn morning. The sputtering began about halfway through his drive. John frowned, glancing at the dashboard of his aging sedan. The engine light flickered before staying on permanently. A few moments later, the car shuddered violently and coasted to a stop. He cursed under his breath. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, devoid of passing cars or cell service. When he stepped out, the sound of silence was unnerving. The usual chirping of birds and rustling leaves was gone. It felt as though the world was holding its breath. And there it was, the bar. The Hollow Lantern loomed just a short walk ahead, its weathered facade appearing even more menacing up close. John hesitated. Something about the place made his stomach churn, but he didn't have much of a choice. He pushed open the heavy wooden door, a low creak echoing in the dim interior. Inside, the bar was darker than it had any right to be, given the time of day. Dust motes swirled in the weak light streaming through narrow, grimy windows. The air smelled faintly of mildew and stale beer. A dozen pairs of eyes turned toward him, each face shadowed and unreadable. The patrons sat stiffly, their postures unnaturally rigid, as if frozen mid-motion. Behind the counter stood an old woman. Her gray hair was tied in a tight bun, and her hollow eyes seemed to pierce through John. She moved toward him with a deliberate, measured pace, as though every step carried some heavy burden. "You're lost," she said without preamble. Her voice was raspy, like dry leaves scraping together. John blinked. "Excuse me?" "This isn't your place," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "You need to leave now. If you stay, you'll never get out." "I just need a tow truck," John said, forcing a polite smile. "My car broke down outside. Can you give me a number to call?" The woman didn't reply. Instead, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the back without another word. John sighed, his frustration mounting. He sat at a corner table and poured himself a glass of water from the pitcher that sat there. The other patrons hadn't stopped staring. Their eyes followed him with a synchronized intensity that made his skin crawl. After what felt like an eternity, the old woman returned. She didn't bring a phone number. Instead, she repeated her cryptic warning, "Leave, now! If you don't, you'll be lost forever." "Look," John snapped, his patience fraying. "I don't know what kind of weird game this is, but I just need help." "My car, go," she interrupted, her tone final. "Before it's too late." Irritated, John slammed his glass down and stormed out of the bar. The first thing he noticed was the darkness. The sun, which had been hanging low in the afternoon sky, was gone. A starless void now stretched above him. His car was nowhere to be seen, and the road looked different. It twisted and turned in impossible directions, forming a labyrinth of cracked asphalt. "Hello," John called out, his voice trembling. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision. He spun around, but there was no one there. Then came the voices. "You're not from here. whispered one, disembodied and faint. "She warned you," hissed another. Panic set in as John began walking, then running, desperate to find his way out. The road stretched endlessly, every turn leading him back to the same place. Faces appeared in the darkness, silent, watching, judging. They melted away when he approached, only to reappear moments later. Time lost meaning. Hours, maybe days, passed as John wandered the labyrinth. His throat was dry, his legs weak. Just when he thought he might collapse, he saw it. The bar. John stumbled through the door, his voice hoarse as he begged the old woman for help. "Please," he gasped. "I don't know what's happening. Just tell me how to get out of here." The old woman regarded him with a mix of pity and indifference. "This is your last chance," she said. "Go through that door and never come back." She pointed to a narrow door at the back of the bar that John hadn't noticed before. Without hesitation, he obeyed. The door opened to the road outside, his car waiting for him. The engine purred to life as though nothing had ever been wrong. John sped away, not daring to look back. When he reached home, the clock revealed that only a few hours had passed since he first left for work. Exhausted, he collapsed onto the couch and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning, the events of the previous day felt distant and hazy, like a half-remembered nightmare. John convinced himself it had been a vivid dream, until he saw the bar again on his drive to work. This time, there was a car parked outside, its hood up and steam rising from the engine. A man stood beside it, staring at the hollow lantern. John's heart pounded as the memories came rushing back. The labyrinth, the voices, the warning. He slowed his car, wrestling with indecision. Should he warn the man? Would it even matter? As the man began walking toward the bar, John gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. "This isn't his place," John whispered, echoing the woman's words. But was it his responsibility to stop him? The man disappeared through the bar's door. John drove on,